The reason that what is a good question to ask rather than how is how sort of asks, I need to have all steps 1 through 10 figured out, and I don't even know what step 1 is, but what allows you to take step 1? What can I do right now? You just ask yourself what, and it'll start to, at least the first step will be revealed to you. And that's why it's a more powerful question than how.
Welcome to Rise and Stride, where we empower you to take your next step in an ever-changing business landscape. Here's your host, Denise LeDuc-Frémy, President and CEO of the California Society of CPAs.
Hello, and thanks for joining us for another episode of Rise and Stride. With me today is Emily Liang, a former corporate leader who launched her own consulting and mentoring business specifically geared for Asian women. Prior to the jump into coaching, Emily served in various marketing roles in the food industry, most recently as director of a large retail manufacturing company, think Entenmann's, and many other brands that are within this umbrella. Thanks for joining me, Emily. I am so excited to talk to you.
I'm so honored to be here, Denise. Thanks for having me.
Oh my, I'm grateful. And there's a lot of great information that'll be shared. And we're going to really have a detailed and interesting conversation on coaching and mentoring, which is really at the heart of really any relationship that you have, and so important to the success of your career and definitely your own, I would say, happiness within that career.
Absolutely. Yes. Coaching is a very near and dear subject to my heart, obviously.
Well, I can't wait to dig in. So with the first question, we always like to ask, our just our guests really about their story. So how did you get from being a corporate leader and decide that, what was that aha moment to say, I really want to be in coaching, I want to mentor professionals and specifically Asian women?
Well, when I first started, I didn't even know what coaching was. I didn't know it existed. I didn't know people could have coaches. What really happened was that I was at a point in my career where I was looking for more fulfillment, more joy, more happiness, and I didn't know how to get it. And so I turned to reading books, attending personal development seminars, and through that process, I was introduced to people who had coaches and went through that process myself, hired a coach. And actually, one of my coaches, she said to me, hey, have you ever considered coaching? And I said, well, why do you say that? She says, well, you always come to our sessions energized and prepared, and you love this process. And I said, of course, I love this process. You get someone who listens to you, who helps you grow and helps you think beyond what you're possibly capable of. Of course, I love this process. And she just reminded me that not everyone is as engaged in the coaching process, just for various reasons. And so she just shared with me that I had a particular passion for it. And that's when I realized that it really was something I was quite passionate about, something that I really wanted to do more of and be engaged in. And so I decided to start a business at that time to help other Asian professionals, because in my career, I had been mentored by my bosses. I had great managers, but there was always something missing for me, which was the specific advice on how to get over myself, essentially. A lot of the advice I was given, I understood from a logical perspective, but when it came to actually executing it and getting over some of the fear and getting over some of the, just worried about what other people would think, and I didn't know how to do that for myself. And so I wanted to become a coach to help others with that missing gap.
Do you feel that sometimes, when I was coming up, we didn't really talk about coaching, right? And I wonder if young professionals sometimes think, oh, there has to be something wrong for me to have a coach, rather than it really helps me understand myself. And as you said, how I show up and where I want to go, right? Now it's more from a surviving to thriving than it is there's something wrong. Are there conversations like that you have with young professionals? I'm just curious.
It's a really good question. And I think we often forget that there are so many successful people out there who have coaches. If you think of, we've got the Olympics coming up. If you think of all the Olympic athletes, 100% of them probably have coaches, I would imagine, and they're at the top of their game. And why do people at the top of their game need coaches, you might ask yourself? because they're trying to take it to the next level and the next level and the next level. And coaches help, they look at your blind spots, they make you accountable for your own goals, they push you beyond what you could do. Fitness trainers do that too. And so we see that so often in the athletic world, but we don't often attribute that same level of success or even that type of performance to the corporate working world. But it's the same thing. Coaches are there to help you take your, quote unquote, game or career to the next level in the very same ways that they do that for elite athletes.
That's so true. When you say it now, I'm like, yeah, of course. That's easy, right? But you think about it, we hire coaches for baseball, everything, right? But then when it comes to ourselves and helping us to elevate what we're doing as being leaders, we think, oh, well, we don't have to take time for that. That's a really good comparison, Emily.
It's performance, right? Our performance is performance. When you're at your job, you're performing. And so, of course, if you think about it, why not hire a coach to take you to the next level? And it doesn't have to be a coach per se. We have mentors, we have sponsors, we have, former managers, people that are willing to show you where you can take it to the next level, where you might have blind spots, and they know you, maybe sometimes parts of you better than you know yourself. Right. So it doesn't have to be a formal coaching relationship. It just needs to be somebody who maybe has walked the path before you and can tell you, hey, here's a shortcut you can take, or maybe this is the mistake that I wouldn't do again. And that's really what coaching is. It's a way for you to accelerate your career path.
Well, that's great. And you mentioned the, mentoring, you mentioned sponsoring. So how critical do you think it is? Like, 'cause there's many different channels here, right? And avenues. And so how critical do you think it is? I have my little board of directors, I call it, and it's a group of 5 people. I keep it in my wallet. And those people are really hold me accountable and keep me honest, right, with myself. And sometimes the self-talk is, what can be probably the most impactful in a good or bad way. So how important it is to have kind of that board of directors or those individuals that help you to, like you said, accelerate or keep you accountable?
This is also a really good question, because I think we should all be thinking about who's on my team, right? I'm going to use the athletic analogy again, maybe because the Olympics are coming up, but if you think about a lot of these athletes, they have teams around them. Not only do they have coaches, but they have teammates, runners have people that pace with them to help push them again to go faster and faster and faster. So if we take that analogy and apply it to work, our careers, we should always be thinking about who's on my team. And so we always think about who's on our formal team, my colleague, my manager, my 2-up director, something like that. But if you think of yourself as the business, as the product, as the athlete, right? Your team can be really anyone who's there to support you, and you may need them to play different roles. So you may need your manager and your 2-up manager to help specifically with your growth in your job. You also might need a mentor who's maybe in the organization or not in the organization, who can either introduce you to different people, help you realize what are the stumbling blocks that might befall you as you're, moving along your journey path, your career path. And then you also have people like friends who are maybe more uplifting or positive that you can have in your life. You might want to have a colleague who's not in the same organization, but they're maybe in the same role, and you challenge each other, right? Ask the questions that you really don't feel comfortable asking people in your organization. So when we think about who's on our team, we can think about ourselves as the business and the brand, and then who are you surrounding yourself with for accountability, motivation, positive self-talk, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's very holistic. And I think sometimes we think about it as siloed, right? I need to go down this path, and it's more of a holistic, like you said, journey. Where do I need to go? I like that. I hope people are taking notes, because there's some really good tips here for all of us. So on your website, you note that you understand the unique pressures of Asian women. So can you explain what those pressures are and how you overcame some of those?
The unique pressures that I speak of are they're sort of layered pressures, right? So if we think of let's just think of work. There's a lot of pressures at work, pressures to perform well, to drive results. That pressure is shared by many people, especially if you want to do well and you're a high achiever. And then layered under that is sort of what I call sometimes women, because I'm a woman, I can speak to this experience. We face different pressures. A lot of women I speak to have confidence challenges, imposter syndrome. They maybe worry about coming across in a certain way that is not intended. Maybe they're not visible enough at work. And I find this is shared across all women. Doesn't even matter if you're Asian or not. And then when you go even further down in another layer with Asian women, specifically with the people that I help, a lot of Asian women have what I call cultural layers on top of that, which is some of the things that we're taught when we're young with all good intentions from the people who raise us. And things like, especially in the Asian culture, things like work really hard, put your head down, always, defer to authority if they're in the room. Those things are never done with malice. We're never taught those things because our parents or the people that raised us want to keep us down. It's just how they were raised and how their parents were raised. And these are things that are generationally been happening quite a long time, because at the time for their generation, it served them well, right? It served my father well, and it served my mother well for their job. But I think in the world that we live in today, there's such a greater need for visibility and to, be seen and have a personal brand and be a contributor, that those things no longer serve us. And so those cultural layers, when you start to understand what they are, and many of my clients aren't even aware that that's what's happening when they're afraid to speak up in a meeting. They're not even aware that they're deferring to authority. It's just a lot of this stuff is sort of covered up. And so we don't always know what's driving our behavior or thinking patterns. So I work with a lot of women, a lot of Asian women, to help understand that the reason that they're not, as I said, speaking up in a meeting, or they feel uncomfortable speaking up in a meeting, it's not because they're not leadership material, and it's not because they're shy. A lot of people just think, oh, I'm an introvert, I'm just shy. But the reality of it is that there's a very deep set respect for authority. And if my boss is in the room, then I tend just not to speak up, because I don't want to speak out of turn or make my boss look bad or say something that contradicts my boss. So a lot of those things come into play. So that's essentially how I help Asian women.
I really like how you did the layers, right? Because we can think about that in a lot of different perspectives, right? So it's very helpful to think about, well, there's this piece and then this, and there's the many different impacts, right? As you think about it. It's really helpful. Thank you for that. So I want to mention your mission, because we'd all like this mission to live up. So I love it. It's empowering people to live life fulfilled with purpose, joy, and meaning. So how do you help your clients to kind of work on achieving these aspects? Because we all say, we want, and especially I think the younger generation, because for my generation, we just said, like you said, work hard. My dad would always say, if you're if you're happy, work, if you're sad, work. That just was the way it was. And so we didn't think about purpose, although I always, gravitated towards purpose. How do you help people just fulfill that in themselves?
The first thing I always do with a client is I ask them, what would you love to do? Because oftentimes we are following a path that we've been on since elementary school, right? And I have been on this path myself. And it's easy to be on that path. We go to school. We are encouraged to get good grades. We're encouraged to do the things that make our resume look good so that we can get into a great college. And then when we're in college, we do the same thing. We do well in school so that we can get a good job. And then we find ourselves in a job, that we enjoy. But at some point, we're like working harder, which is what we used to do, which was a strategy that served us well up until now. At one point in our career, everyone hits this at some point, where working harder simply doesn't get you the same results that it used to. And at that point, people start to question, well, what am I doing it for? Well, how do I get results? How do I be happy? Because ultimately, just they're trying to seek joy and happiness, and results and success we feel will give us that. So I always start these conversations by saying, what would you love to do? And people need to take a beat. They don't always know how to answer that question. Because when we can start to come from a place of, this is what I would love to do with not only our work, but what would you love to do with your free time? What would you love to do in relationships? What kind of relationship would you like to have? What would you love to have in your career? What kind of contribution would you love to be making to the world? When we can come from that place, we can start to unravel maybe some of the expectations that have been placed on us that weren't even our own. And from there, we can start to understand our own wishes, our own desires, and start to create a vision and a strategy for ourselves to pursue that. And from that point, we can start to do the things that make us happy and start to let go of the things that don't, which is also which is an important part of being happy, right? Which is a lot of letting go and setting boundaries. And it's a process. It's a process that we do every single day, every single moment, every single decision. We ask ourselves, is this something that I would love? And I find that to be a very good guiding principle. Whenever you're faced with a decision, it says, am I doing this out of obligation, or am I doing this out of a true desire to do this?
So do you think you can have whatever you're doing and find that love within it by asking more questions, digging into the piece of it that you enjoy? Like, there's relationship building in a lot of, careers. There's just being able to help people to see what they need to do, right? But sometimes you don't focus on that. So can you just sometimes flip your lens on how you look at things?
Absolutely, you can flip the lens anytime. We have the power to do that. It's just, are you willing to take that on? Because it requires a level of awareness that you're looking to change. And that's something that only you're ready for. And you may not even know what that looks like or how to even start the change, but there's something inside of you that's curious for something different, maybe a different experience or a different way of showing up at work. And I would say follow that. That's your intuition saying that there's something more for me. I'm made for more. I would like to contribute at a greater level or have deeper, more meaningful connections. And so, yes, there's absolutely a way to turn the lens. What it requires is some honesty and some awareness to say, how am I feeling in this moment? Is this something that, is this project, or is this relationship, or is this event I'm going to, whatever the case may be, am I doing this because I have to? Is my mindset around, I have to do this, I'm obligated, I don't feel like I'm in control? Or is it coming from, I would really love to do this. I think that this would help me grow. This might be challenging, but I'm willing to step into the on the zone of uncomfortness. I guess that's not even a word, but a zone of discomfort. Sorry, to do this because I know it's going to help me achieve a level of growth and skill and experience that I didn't have before. So the first step is just to get aware of, how am I feeling in this moment? And do I feel obligated, or do I really want to do this?
It's interesting because, you're talking about transformation, which we all have to go through continually in our life. But it sounds like what you're saying is just awareness is the first piece of making some of those changes. And that's probably the hardest.
It's simple, but it's not easy, because awareness requires us to take the autopilot off for a moment, right? And, this is something I work on even today. No one's perfect at this. It's literally a practice, just like working out or eating healthy foods. It's a decision that you choose to make, that in this moment, I choose to be aware of how I'm feeling. And our feelings are a very good compass to navigate that awareness. I think feelings are always a bit of a touchy-feely topic for corporate. We don't always talk about that. We think about thinking and logical minds and making rational decisions. But a lot of times our feelings are really helpful to help navigate us to the thing that we would love to do, right? So if you're not sure what you would love to do, you either feel drawn towards it or a little bit, not feeling like it's for you, like a little bit resistant to it. And so that's kind of what I'm suggesting you lean into more as I talk about awareness is how are you feeling in this moment? Do you feel drawn? Do you feel resistant? And from there, then you can start to hone in on those reactions and those emotions, and that awareness will grow.
Yeah, it's something, that isn't common. I think after COVID, it was more common, right? To kind of lean more into this than in the past. So that's a positive, right? That's come out of COVID. So switching gears just a bit, you talk somewhat about self-advocacy and the importance in self-advocacy. And I would say, a number of us are probably not comfortable with advocating for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
What would you suggest people do to kind of help them lean into that and be more successful?
So there are a couple of things I think about when I think about self-advocacy. I think a lot of people find it difficult because a lot of people, and this isn't by any means a judgment, because we are human, and these are a lot of human behavior that we have, right? And I count myself in this group. But I think a lot of people avoid or don't like self-advocacy because usually we do it because we're trying to get visibility and get recognition, maybe get a promotion. And on the other side of that request is a chance of rejection, or at least we believe there's a chance of rejection. And we're afraid of that rejection because many people will take it personally. I think it's because when it comes to our careers, a lot of people associate their identity and their self-worth with their work. And if the work or the request for a promotion or request for different opportunities, for example, if it gets, and I'm using air quotes, rejected, right? We tend to associate that was, well, I got rejected. So advocacy is something that we avoid because of that connection. We tie those two things together. So the important thing to remember is that we are so much more than our work. Our careers, it's a huge part of our life, absolutely. And we can put our whole heart into it and drive and make contributions and drive results. And at the end of the day, we are also people outside of work, and we have worth and assets and relationships and just so much we can give outside of work that we have to remember that. And oftentimes when we ask for things at work, if it does get rejected, it's not actually rejecting us, it's just rejecting that particular request, right? So we have to separate ourselves from that and know that our worth is not tied, our identity is not tied to what we do.
That's hard. That's difficult.
It is, again, simple, but not easy. And that's part of the awareness, right? When even just by saying this out loud, maybe someone is going to have the awareness of like, oh yeah, my identity isn't my job, but maybe we're sort of in our routine and we don't always realize that's the case. So separating yourself from your job, it's not to say that, I'm a different person at work than I am at home. That's not what I mean at all. I mean that just untether your sense of self-worth from what gets done at work.
I like that, untether. That's good. That's good advice, really is. So you have some other advice when on some of your LinkedIn posts, what is the saying? Insanity is doing the same thing and expecting different results. So you kind of talk about that. You encourage people to ask different questions so that they can see different results in their life. So what are some of those questions you encourage individuals to ask to kind of go down maybe a different path or not keep doing this, getting the same results?
Right. So before I can answer that question, I should share with people what are the common questions that we do ask. And those common questions that we are always asking, if you think about when someone, well, let me give you a real life example. So we've talked about self-awareness. And how do I develop self-awareness? Notice what I just asked there. Everybody always asks, well, how? How do I do that? How do I solve this problem? And how is a very common question, but it's not a good quality question. A good quality question allows your mind to open up to different possibilities. How wants all the steps laid out. It's like, if I don't know all the steps laid out, then I don't know how to solve this problem. And so we can often find ourselves stuck in a mental loop when we're trying to solve something that we're really stuck on. We just say, how? And we wonder why we can't get to the answer, because how is never going to solve the problem. Because you only have the same, how uses the experience you have to solve this problem. But this is a new problem. So you need new experience to solve it. The other common question that people ask is why. Usually when things aren't going well, they say, well, why is this happening? Or why is this happening? And again, why isn't going to get you to a solution. It just we sort of go over the same problem over and over. And again, we don't know how to get out of this mental loop. Instead, what I encourage people to ask are good quality questions. And a good quality question that you can ask is who? Who can be on my team that can help me through this challenge? Who do I know that I could ask to help me solve this problem? Who do I need on my team to mentor me through the situation? So who is a very powerful question, because all of a sudden you've opened up your awareness to people in your ecosystem who could potentially support you and give you the information that you need. Or even at work, it could just be who in the organization, who on the team, who have I encountered in a networking session that I could call upon to help me with this. So who is a very good quality question. And then the other good quality question is what? Specifically asked, if you have a problem, you can say, what can I do right now to take this problem, to solve it to the next, to take it to the next step? The reason that what is a good question to ask rather than how is how sort of asks, I need to have all steps 1 through 10 figured out. And I don't even know what step 1 is. So that's the mental loop that we get into. But what allows you to take step 1? What can I do right now? Do I need to make a phone call? Do I need to look something up? Do I need to just break it into smaller pieces? You just ask yourself what, and it'll start to, at least the first step will be revealed. It's revealed to you. And that's why it's a more powerful question than how.
This is gold, Emily. Just what you said. I hope everyone listening got that, because I think a lot of times how gets us into the transactional functions, like you said, and the others open it up. So very powerful what you said, the who and the what. I'm taking copious notes because that's start that. It's a really positive, I think, framework on how to solve some of the issues. So audience, remember that who and what. You gave some really good examples. And when I was talking to you, I don't know, about a month ago, we were talking about networking and how people think networking and they're like, oh, I don't want to do that. They bristle, right? But you mentioned a different way to look at networking. And I've actually shared that because it's very powerful. Can you share that with the audience as well?
Yes, networking is so fun, right? We all love networking, right? I'm totally kidding, because networking is one of those things we all know it's important. And we know it's going to be helpful for our career to have a wide network of people that we can call upon. And yet the act itself can feel so draining, and we don't look forward to it. And yet we have to do it so often. And so the distinction that I like to share with people when they do not look forward to networking is because again, if we think about why, the awareness, and we always start off with awareness. Why do I not enjoy networking? What about it is not enjoyable for me? And it's usually because we're networking because we're in need of something. Maybe you're looking for a new opportunity, or you're looking to find a mentor. Whatever the case may be, we approach networking oftentimes with this energy of, I need to get something out of it. I need to meet someone who's going to help me. And so there's this discomfort around it, because I think at our core, that's not how we're built as people, that we don't enjoy those types of, you never call friendships networking, because friendships aren't about getting something out of each other. It's just connecting and getting to know each other and whatnot. And yet when we turn it into a professional setting, we need something out of it. So the real distinction and how we can flip that on its head is if we think about going into a networking session with the intention of giving. How do I give something to this person that I'm about to meet? And that could look very differently for different interactions. Giving can be, maybe you're talking with this person and there's something that they mentioned that is a goal of theirs or something they're looking, or maybe it's a hobby that they're interested in and you read an article the other day about that. Maybe it's about pickleball and they really like pickleball and you said, you know what, I'd love to share this article with you. And in doing so, not only are you giving them something, right? Or you're also creating a connection, and you're also, there's a follow-up there that you can follow up with. And it's just a more meaningful connection than just a simple interaction. Another thing that you can do to give is think about who in your network, right? Who being another powerful question, who in your network can you connect this person to? And again, they could be working on a project and a goal, and there's somebody in your network that you feel would benefit from an introduction. That's another way that you can give. When we network to give, we're literally listening for opportunities to serve this person. And as human beings, that's just in our nature. We're naturally wanting to help everyone else and wanting to help other people. So it just takes the pressure off. And some people may think, well, what if I do need to get something out of this? And what I will say to that is networking, if we really think about it, you're never really going to get anything out of a 5-minute interaction of someone you just met. It's more about how do you start the relationship and create a connection so that you can follow up and nurture that relationship. And down the road, you never know where opportunities are going to come from, but they usually come from the relationships that you've built. So networking is really just like dating, meeting people. How do you give something to them that'll help you have a connection and create the beginning of a relationship, and then nurture that down the road?
Yeah, the relationships 100% is the key. And so the last question we have before we sign off here is, what are the 3 takeaways, Emily, that you would give to the audience that would help them on a path forward for their professional development to accelerate, their capabilities?
I think we've talked about a lot of these topics already, but the first thing that I would encourage someone to do as they grow in their career is to develop awareness around how they're feeling in the moment. Because what that is starting to do is going to start to guide you. It's going to become a compass for what you enjoy doing, what you don't enjoy doing, what might be in need of some skill development or mentorship or accountability so that you can grow that thing that maybe you don't enjoy doing into something that you do enjoy doing. So awareness, and really that's all that looks like, is just taking a moment and sort of being present and asking yourself, how do I really feel about that? So awareness is a really good way to start that process. The second thing that I would encourage people to do is to start feeding their mind with growth-minded information. And that could be podcasts like this one, or books, or documentaries. We consume a lot of information on a day-to-day. This is just a small tweak to say, how do I start to consume more information that's actually going to feed my mind, right? Give me insights, give me distinctions, new perspectives. Things are going to challenge my thinking. And I'm all for the entertaining, consumption of things sometimes, right? And we always need that because we need fun in our life, and know that feeding our mind is honestly one of the quickest ways to start to shift your awareness, because you're going to start to hear and read things and then start to notice them in your world. It's kind of a cool thing that happens. And then the last thing I would encourage people to do is to find someone who has maybe taken the path that you would like to take, and find a way to get some time with them. Maybe it's a 15-minute chat. If they're local, get together for coffee and just pick their brain on, tell me about your career path. How did you, what were some of the biggest stumbling blocks? How did you overcome them? What are the things that you learned? What would you do now that you wouldn't do before? The reason that's so critical is because another fast way to learn is, instead of learning it all by yourself, which is what I mentioned in step number 2, which is you can consume a lot of information. That is helpful and it's important to do, but to know that the consumption of all that information isn't going to help you if you don't know what pieces to drop out, right? Knowing a lot of info is good, but you also need to know what you don't have to do. And learning from somebody who's gone down that path is a really great strategy for accelerating your growth and career, because they can tell you right away, like, here's what I wouldn't do if I had to do this again. And that's just saved you a ton of time. So finding a mentor, a coach, anyone along the path that you can trust to help you accelerate your journey is going to be really important.
That's great advice, really. Awareness, feeding your mind with positivity, right? And then growth mindset, and then finding someone who can help you, that mentor. It's good. You can know so much, right? But they help kind of hone it down to what those digestible bite size or those pieces should be.
Easier to let go of things sometimes than to do it all.
Exactly. That can be exhausting at times because there's a lot out there. Well, Emily, you have given us so much good information. I hope the audience took notes. There's a lot of good tidbits in here. And I'm just grateful that Lily connected us. There's the relationship again in the community, right? And that I was able to, be at I think we were at the LA Business Journal Women's Leadership event with you and continue to learn from you. Honestly, grateful for the conversation. There's always opportunity to learn and grow, and just to appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Denise. I've really enjoyed our conversation, and this is a passion of mine, as you can tell. And I do hope that someone listening out there has found it really useful and can take action on it.
And feel free to reach out to Emily. We'll have some information when we have the podcast, but she's the real deal and she's really easy to talk to. So encourage you to reach out. Thank you.
Thanks, Denise.
Rise and Stride is produced by the California Society of Certified Public Accountants. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. And if you enjoy the show, leave us a rating and review. To learn more, visit calcpa.org.